The Attorney General of the United States, Pam Bondi, is getting grilled over the January 6th pardons. She immediately claps back with all of President Biden's blanket pardons. You guys gotta check this out.
Chairman and Ranking Member Meng for holding this important hearing, and thank you, Attorney General Bondi, for appearing before us today. Madam Attorney General, I serve, in addition to the Appropriations Committee, as a ranking member of the Committee on House Administration. I sent you a letter last week, along with my Republican counterpart, Chairman Brian Stile, requesting an increase in federal prosecutory resources to address threats against members of Congress, particularly in light of what happened last week in Minnesota, that tragedy. In 2024, the U.S. Capitol Police identified and received nearly 9,500 concerning statements or threats against members. Federal prosecutors have only secured 8 convictions so far, and the heightened threat environment demands an all-hands-on-deck approach. Will you commit to assigning an assistant U.S. attorney or a special assistant U.S. attorney in each of the 94 federal districts to, at least on a part-time basis, investigate and prosecute threats against members of Congress?
So thank you for bringing that up, and I take that very seriously. Not only what happened in Minnesota was horrible. I've spoken to Keith Ellison. I've spoken to Amy Klobuchar about that. It's horrible. We are involved in that. The FBI was involved. Our U.S. attorneys are involved. Many of these are district to district. So the way we're doing that is, I will tell you, my National Security Division is involved in all of those and assisting in those. We meet every single morning and we discuss that. But many of those, Minnesota, will be handled in the state in which it happened. Another one is Governor, I'm sorry if I can keep going. I'm sorry.
Sure.
I don't mean
Quickly,
to
though.
I filibuster. Governor Shapiro and what happened in Pennsylvania with Governor Shapiro. I've spoken to Governor Shapiro. We are working hand in hand, our U.S. attorney with the district attorney there, hand in hand, just like in Minnesota. I made sure our U.S. attorney and our district attorneys there were working hand in hand. Political party doesn't matter when something like this happens. And I also want to make sure all members of Congress are safe as well.
Okay, and I would reiterate, Chairman Stile and I think Chairman Stile and I agree that at least a part-time in each of the 94 districts would be appropriate. Let me change topics for just a moment.
I'm really quick on that. Yes, we're doing that through our National Security Division, so I think that's already in the works, and I would be glad to meet with you in a secure facility to talk about that.
Very good. Thank you. Continuing, in addition to my role here, the committee that I serve on as an authorizer oversees Capitol security as well as federal elections, so I'm closely following the aftermath of January 6th. Recently, several defendants who received presidential pardons related to that day are now arguing in court that the pardon covers crimes like, for instance, illegal firearm possession discovered in a search of an individual's home in California months after January 6th. What's your position on whether the pardons cover these separate offenses?
Yeah, the pardon power rests with the president, not the Department of Justice, and some of that is pending litigation, and I cannot discuss pending litigation.
Well, I'm not asking you about who has the right to a pardon. I think, as the Department of Justice in February wrote, the pardon is an act of grace which removes the punishment from a crime a person has committed. It further said, in its effect, the granting of a pardon is in no sense the overturning of a judgment of conviction. It is an executive action that mitigates or sets aside punishment. So, as the chief law enforcement officer, what's your opinion? Not the president's power of whether he can offer a pardon. That's pretty clear in the Constitution. But for crimes committed unrelated to January 6th, would you suggest that the pardons would cover activities or crimes potentially committed outside of that by the same person?
Well, I don't know if you're referring to Joe Biden pardoning his son after he said he would not pardon Hunter Biden. Or the
No, I actually
commutation
referred
of
to
all
January
the
6th. I'm sorry.
all the sentences that
Well,
the people that were on death row. I've met with those families,
No,
and all of those sentences were commuted. I'm not going to comment on pardons on either side of the aisle.
So, well, I'm not asking about either side. I'm asking, you're the chief law enforcement officer in the United States. You have a responsibility directly, you swore an oath to the Constitution, not the president. Want to know what your views are on the extent to which pardons cover potential crimes committed by individuals who have been pardoned but unrelated to January 6th.
Do you mean the ones that were done by the auto pen? I'm not going to discuss
right.
anything that
Mr.
could
Chairman,
be or not be
I
pending litigation.
respectfully, Ms. DeLauro accused you of filibustering. I think that's the height of filibustering. This is a serious, serious topic. And for you to suggest that you don't have an opinion or to divert to other things that have nothing to do with January 6 pardons, I think is frankly demeaning to your responsibilities and your job. With that, I'll yield back.
I don't care what anybody tells me. There is no way that an 80-something-year-old senile man is signing 1,500 pardons in a single day. There was somebody behind it. It was the auto pen. It was not Joe Biden. And that in itself makes every single pardon null and void. Why is this man so concerned about the January 6th pardons, but he did not utter a single word when Joe Biden did a blanket pardon on his last day in office? If you want to be impartial, you have to treat everybody the same. You can't demonize the January 6th political prisoners any longer. They have suffered enough. And a lot of those people didn't do anything. They walked between the velvet ropes inside the Capitol, yet they spent 4 years in a maximum security prison, and in a lot of cases, without even seeing their families. It was straight up evil what they put those men and women through. If you ask me, that was one of Donald Trump's best things he did on his first day in office, which was freeing every single one of them. Because all they were doing was peacefully and patriotically protesting. But I mean, you can't make up the hypocrisy on this dude. He sees no issue on doing a blanket pardon covering 10 years, and it doesn't even specify on what crimes. Do you think that's fair? I know we'll never see it, but I really do believe that Anthony Fauci committed some heinous crimes, and I do think that he should be held accountable, but he won't. Joe Biden hit the dude with some BS pardon so he never has to worry about it a day in his life. This is so messed up and such an abuse of power. If you want to pardon somebody, you should tell the American people exactly what crime they committed and why you decided to give them a pardon. You can't just say, oh yeah, those 10 years of your life, you could have done the worst things imaginable, and you're going to be walking free. Don't you worry about it. But regarding all the pardons that happened on Biden's last day in office, who do you think was controlling the auto pen? Who wanted these pardons to happen?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Governor Pritzker, do you know how much illegal immigration costs your state each year?
No, sir, I do not.
Costs over $780 per family per year. That's a lot of money, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And may I ask, what do you mean by the cost?
That is a lot of money.
The
for
cost
the
of
cost
illegal
your state.
immigration.
Let me ask you, do you know who Franklin Jose Pena Ramos is?
Are you talking about the federal government's
I'm
cost to
asking
the
you if you
state
know
of
who
Illinois as a
Franklin
result of
Jose
the
Pena
failed
Ramos is.
immigration policy?
It's a yes or no question. I'll take that as a no. Do you know who Jose Martinez Rangel is?
No, sir, I do not.
You don't. You should. Those are two men who came into this country illegally, raped and murdered 12-year-old Jocelyn Nungary in my home state of Texas. Do you think that elected officials should have welcomed them into our communities?
Sir,
Question.
before they committed a crime, I'm not sure what you're asking.
Do you think that they should have been welcomed into our communities? That's a very straightforward question.
Someone who commits murder, no. Someone who commits murder should be apprehended.
Why did you state during Biden's border crisis that illegal aliens, quote, should have been welcomed and helped by elected officials?
When you say illegal
I'm
aliens,
asking
these
you,
are
should
people
these
who are
people have been
given
welcomed and
asylum.
helped into our communities?
People who are
That's an
asylum
easy
seekers.
yes or no question.
Well, you're mischaracterizing them.
It is your position that they should have been welcomed into our communities. Is that correct?
There were asylum
from
seekers
your
who were
own
here
statement.
legally.
And
There
then
were
they went
asylum
on and
seekers.
murdered and raped 12-year-old Jocelyn.
Someone who
Nungary.
commits murder should be held accountable. We do that in the state.
And
of
you think
Illinois.
they should have been welcomed into our communities before they did?
I don't know how you can tell before somebody commits a crime
You can
that they are
secure
going
the
to
border
commit the
and
crime.
not let illegal aliens come into our communities. Do you support abolishing ICE?
Asylum seekers.
Do you support abolishing ICE?
No, I believe we need an immigration force in the United States.
You
In
don't.
fact,
You believe a budget is a moral document. Is that correct?
I do.
You do. You tweeted that. Your administration gave $12,000 to the Organized Communities Against Deportations, which just this past month was marching in the streets of Chicago with signs saying abolish ICE. Do you support this?
I do not.
Is this a
support
reflection of
abolishing
your
an
moral
immigration
values?
force.
Is this a reflection of your moral values?
I do not support abolishing an immigration force.
That's good to hear. Mr. Governor, do you think that biological men should be able to use women's restrooms?
I'm not sure how this has to do with immigration.
It's
sir.
just a yes or no question.
Why are you
It's very easy to
politicizing
answer.
this?
Do you
I
think
thought
that
we were
men
here
should be using
doing
women's
fact
restrooms?
finding. I'm sorry?
Do you think men should be allowed in women's restrooms?
I'm not sure why this has come to this issue.
You
It has
tweeted
nothing
that
to do
as
with
a
immigration.
protest against President Trump, everyone should use the other gender's bathroom today. Have you ever used the women's restroom?
Not that I can recall ever, sir. No.
You wanted everybody else to do it, but you didn't?
Sir, I'm not sure
that-
why we're on a topic that has
I'm
nothing to
asking
do
you,
with
you're
today's hearing.
advocating for men to use women's restrooms, but you didn't do it?
I do not advocate that, no.
Well, actually, you did. You said everyone should use the other gender's bathroom today.
I can tell you that you are
Do you regret
politicizing
saying
this
this?
in a way that what we ought to be focusing on is
Do you
the
regret
failure of the federal
encouraging men to
government
use women's restrooms?
and the Congress to deal with immigration reform.
Do you regret encouraging men to use women's restrooms?
Again, you're taking us on topics that have.
Did you ever
nothing to
consider
do
that
with
women don't
the
want you in
subject
their-
that you
in their
invited us here
bathrooms?
for? So you're admitting that this is just a political circus?
No,
Is
I'm
that what you're
I'm
doing?
asking you
This
because
has
you put
nothing
this
to do
on
with
the
immigration
internet for everybody
and
to
really
see.
about you grandstanding.
I'm asking you, have you ever considered that women don't want you in their bathrooms? That's a private space that they don't want you or any other man in.
Congressman, let's talk about
You
your
can't say that
failure to
normal
vote
people can
for
say that
Medicaid.
they
In
don't-
fact, you want to
that
take
they don't
Medicaid
think
away.
men should be in
and
women's
SNAP
restrooms.
And
That's a
veteran
very
services.
straightforward question.
You apparently want people
And you're
to die
encouraging men to
in the
use
United
women's
States
restrooms
because you
where there
want to
could be
take healthcare
underage
away.
girls. Do you think that's appropriate?
Sir, if we're going to
you think that's
politicize
normal?
this, let's talk about what you're doing to people in
you
this
think that
country
that's normal?
by virtue of your votes.
All right, let's move on.
with
Let's
President
ask,
Trump.
do you support Hamas's agenda?
Sir, I do not. They are a terrorist organization.
Your administration gave a grant to the Muslim Civic Coalition, which just 2 weeks after October 7th was marching in the streets of Chicago to, quote, stop the U.S.-backed genocide against Gaza. Is that a reflection of your values?
I have spent my life fighting anti-Semitism.
No, I'm asking, is this a reflection of your values?
I'm not sure why you're attacking
Because
me
your
about something in an
administration
organization.
gave money to this organization.
I'm explaining to you that what we do in the state of Illinois is stand up for what we believe are
You didn't
our
have to
rights
give
and
money to
freedoms.
the Muslim Civic Coalition
People
to
have
march
the
and
right to
call,
express themselves.
to
That-
stop the
we don't-
U.S.-backed genocide against Gaza. That was your choice.
I know
that was your
Republicans want to
administration.
take away people's right to free speech. We don't in the state of Illinois, and
They've got the right to
that
free
is
speech.
proper.
They don't have the right to tax dollars, and you gave them to them.
We somehow live in a world that is oppressive if you don't want a man in a dress going in the same bathroom as your young daughter. Everybody wants to preach about tolerance, acceptance, being nice to people. If you want to be nice, how about you stand up and protect women so they don't have to be in these uncomfortable situations, and 90% of girls don't want to be caught in this type of situation. Why is it that whenever a transgender question comes along, everybody loses their minds. Everybody gets so emotional. If you were born a man, just go to the bathroom in the men's room. If you were born a female, go to the bathroom in the females. You can call yourself whatever you want on the outside. That doesn't mean that everybody else has to believe you. But I will say this, I take great solace in the fact that people are starting to wake up from the insanity. Like in 2021, 2022, 2023, I thought the entire world went crazy and I was the only sane one. But it seems now that Trump's back in power, people are more willing to speak up and say what they actually believe. Because if you talked bad about a certain group of people before a couple years ago, it's almost like you would be thrown into a gulag. And if you were in some other countries like the UK, you might even be in prison for talking out about this type of stuff. I consider myself a very level-headed, live and let live type of person. If you want to do something, you can do it, as long as it does not affect anybody else. If you want to call yourself a grasshopper, you can call yourself a grasshopper. Just don't force that upon anybody else. That's where I draw the line. That is not okay. It is not the right thing to do. And that's not even to mention the statistics behind it all and how transgender people are far more likely to commit violent acts than people who are not transgender. So we don't want these people around young girls in the bathroom. Is that even a controversial statement? It seems like to a lot of people it is. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on this down below. How do you think we best tackle this issue? Do we do what I said, or do you have a different approach on how you would handle it? Let me know. I'd love to know your thoughts. And if you enjoyed, make sure to smash that like, comment, subscribe, and wish you guys nothing but the best. Till next time.